Hi there, I am Jen Baker and I am the district behaviorist here in Benicia Unified School District, and this is our monthly quick tips session. It is open for parents to drop in live, and so I may need to stop and let people in if they show up in the waiting room. Right now it is just me, but as you know, if you're watching this on YouTube, this will be posted on YouTube. So today what we're going to do, it's actually a review session where I'm going to hit the high points of several previous sessions, all in a way that we're talking about the framework for establishing and teaching family values. So I always start with this quote: working, parenting, and teaching are three different jobs that cannot be done at the same time. It's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because it's too much. Do the best you can, and when you have to pick, because at some point you will, choose connection. And Dr. Emily W. King said this about a year ago, right at the start of all this craziness with COVID and the shutdown. So I know a lot of parents out there are wearing multiple hats, so I'm doing anything I can to apply some of the strategies that I'm usually teaching to school staff to help you all at home get behavior a little smoother and get those routines and schedules established. So the only expectations, really, the last one, be responsible. Take what works for your family and leave the rest. I do pull from strategies and interventions that do have an evidence base, meaning they've been shown to work in a lab, but also in schools and actual homes. However, not everything, it's not one size fits all, not everything's a good fit. So if something doesn't resonate, leave it, move on to the next thing. Hopefully something will. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to do a brief recap of PBIS because that forms the basis of everything that we're talking about today. And then in the context of encouraging and promoting family values, we'll talk about how to establish schedules and routines in your home. We'll review how to make an expectations matrix. We'll talk about behavior-specific parades and pre-correction. And if we have time, we'll also talk about just a quick little video on how to give effective directions. And all of these have full-length videos in and of themselves on the YouTube channel. So just check out the Quick Tips playlist if there's anything about one of these subjects that you want to hear a little more on. We've got a lot packed in today, so let's get going. So the first one is PBIS. To give a framework, our schools in Benicia use something called positive behavior interventions and supports. And basically this is a proactive approach that's used to promote positive behavior. So the focus is on prevention, not punishment. And at its heart, PBIS calls on schools to teach students positive behaviors, just the same way that we would teach any other subject, math, reading, writing. We recognize that students can only meet behavioral expectations if they know what the expectations are. So a great deal of time is spent defining and teaching these expectations so that everybody learns what's considered to be appropriate and that we're all using a common language. And the point of all of it is we want to create environments that are predictable, positive, consistent, and safe. Because it's good for everybody's emotional mental health, and we have better behavior and we get more of the stuff done that we need to get done. So just to show a couple pictures real quick, rather than focusing on what not to do, our schools define and teach behaviors or expectations they want to see. And the place that they start is by identifying 3 to 5 positively stated, easy to remember expectations that are kind of like the overall values for the school, and it reflects the kind of positive climate the school wants to create. So they're similar but a little different. Each school creates their own. At BMS, we have be respectful, make good choices, stay responsible. At Benicia High School, we have rise, respect, include, support, engage. And then we have our elementaries that are all different variations of respectful, responsible, safe, and kind. So there's Mary Farmer, we have the Dragons, the Henderson Hounds, and the Matthew Turner Dolphins. So how this applies to PBIS at home is we can use the same kind of framework that we use in our schools to create an environment for positive behavior at home. It will help you as parents create and maintain a safe, structured, and consistent home environment, which is super important in these crazy cuckoo times where things seem to change on a moment by moment or day-to-day basis. You can make your home environment as predictable as possible. It strengthens adult and child relationships. It benefits kids like of all ages because we're teaching positive behaviors and we're focusing on life skills instead of just reacting to problems. And it's even more effective when the processes and language are not only consistent within the home environment, but consistent with your child's or teenager's school environment. So by linking some of the expectations to the language and what they're used to at school, we can help foster that homeschool connection, particularly since we have this crazy thing where they're at home, but they're also going to school. Very helpful. So we start by establishing schedules and expectations. And I've met with a lot of parents over the past several months, and we always start with schedules and expectations. And the first one is schedules. It seems like so obvious. Why are we even talking about it? But there is not a classroom out there that you're not going to walk into and they don't have a written schedule on the board. It's just part of it. And it's something that can be very, very helpful in the home setting as well. Why is it important? There's actually research that shows that having a schedule and a consistent routine, it creates predictability, consistency, a feeling of safety. It promotes brain regulation and reduces anxiety. There actually is research that shows that. It ensures that we're carving out time for all needs when we have things like exercise and free time programmed in. That's especially important when we're sitting there in front of a screen all day. And most importantly, it's effective. It can reduce problem behaviors, which we have more time to enjoy one another's company and more time to get done what we need to get done, be it at school or in home routines. So the more consistent that routines and schedules can be, the easier it will be to support positive behavior and prevent challenging behavior. So again, we're always looking at whatever we can do to prevent as many problems as possible. Here's just a quick example of a daily home schedule. There's an elementary routine example and a secondary routine example. You'll notice there's no times here. In schools, we always have the times because we follow bell schedules. At home, it may work better to have something that's a little more fluid, with the exception of school Zooms, which will probably happen at scheduled time, or maybe appointments. But you can see we have certain routines appropriate to the developmental age, along with a summary of some of what might be happening during that time. Here's another couple of examples. There's one for teenagers, and then we have one, like the one on the left with the colors is kind of on paper, so you can kind of move it around in case the schedule varies. We have a picture schedule if we have a kid that's a non-reader. But as obvious it is, like I said, putting your schedule in writing, whether it be fancy or just written up and posted, can be very, very helpful in preventing a lot of behavior problems. So that's schedules. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is establishing a family expectations matrix. And I've worked with several families that have done this. And this is basically a visual reminder of your family's expectations or values. Okay, so things that you expect in the home environment. Rules define more specifically the behavior for the areas or routines that align to our overarching expectations. And what we see with consistency over time is rules become routines or habit when they're taught, followed, and reinforced. Okay. So how to develop a matrix. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Like I said, there's a full video on how to do this, but you basically make a table and you select 3 to 5 values that reflect your family's culture. Okay, a lot of times we have things like respectful, responsible, safe, things like that. You can choose what's most important to you, or better yet, look at the parent webpage and use the ones that your child uses at school. So the middle school, be respectful, make good choices, stay responsible. Then what you do across the top is you add common areas of your home or typical routines that are problematic. Okay. Ones that we often see, morning routine and bedtime routine are usually on there, meal times, and definitely what's expected during Zoom lessons or Zoom school. As a family, you brainstorm what the behavior should look like for the locations and routines you listed. And we always want to list things in positive, observable, age-appropriate terms, such as a good example would be solve problems using words. A non-example would be don't yell. We don't want to speak in terms of not what to do. We always want to focus on what they should be doing. So you can see a couple of examples here, say please and thank you, ask and share about your day. Those are respectful behaviors that we expect during mealtime. All right, here's a couple of more examples, both for elementary and high school. You can see we have our overarching expectations, respectful, responsible, and give your best effort. And then we have a comparison of morning routine and outside or exercise time. And you can see the language varies depending on what's developmentally appropriate. And the expectations are a little different. For a teenager, when you're outside, share your location and plans with your family. For a younger kid, it would be stay in the yard. All right. So next we get, one other thing on this is I do encourage you to put this in writing and put it up. Creating the matrix is just the first step, and everything else we're going to talk about today is how to make sure it actually has an effect. It would be great if we could just write it down and then leave it and things would magically happen, but unfortunately behavior change takes kind of an ongoing effort, one that's well worth it, but one that takes a little more time. So make sure that you have the matrix posted. You might have parts of the matrix posted in the respective areas of your home, like maybe the part about Zoom lessons is in the area where your child or teenager is on Zoom lessons. And now we will get on to how to teach the expectations on our matrix. So like I said, it's not a one and done. The goal is to have our overarching framework and priorities and have everybody in agreement in using a common language. And now we need to teach and reinforce the heck out of those expectations. So for younger kids, it might be role playing and acting it out. Good luck trying to get a middle schooler or a high schooler to do a role play with you. It might look a little different teaching them, but it would be reviewing it, maybe asking some comprehension questions, asking them to explain to you their understanding of what it is. So again, developmental appropriateness, but make sure that we're actually making an effort to teach these expectations on an ongoing basis. All right, referencing your matrix. So the next thing is, like, not only is it helpful when you're correcting a behavior to reference the matrix instead of just correcting like the corrections coming from me, we say, remember, we talked about making sure you stay in the Zoom class, not on other sites when you're doing your Zoom lessons, and we can actually refer to it. But part of our referencing our matrix is not just to catch them when they're not meeting the expectations. We want to use behavior-specific praise when our child or teenager actually meets the expectation. So examples of behavior-specific praise. I noticed you washed your hands before lunch. That will help keep you healthy. Thank you for staying at the table to eat your lunch. That was helpful for me while I was on my work Zoom. I appreciate the way you were responsible and wipe the table off after lunch. You notice that isn't just an attaboy or a good job. This is specifically referencing the things in our matrix. Behavior-specific praise really helps adults and kids focus on positive behaviors and actions. It literally is one of the most powerful behavior change tools parents have in their repertoire. It increases the likelihood that kids will use the recognized behaviors in the future. It decreases inappropriate behavior, so we have to spend less time nagging and correcting. It enhances self-esteem and builds self-control. And one of my favorite side effects, I am not kidding. You know how it feels at the end of the day when you've been snipping and reminding and catching and correcting until you're blue in the face. It feels terrible at the end of the day. You will feel differently when you're really making an effort to catch the kids when they're being good. You will feel better at the end of the day. So here's an example of what it looks like. I'll play part of this. It's about 5 minutes, but I couldn't find an example of behavior-specific praise in the home, but this is one in a school setting that actually a PBIS team created this as a video to teach staff how to give behavior-specific praise. So let's play a little bit of this.
All right, great job.
Oh, Mr. Lutz must like his blue shirt. Why didn't Mr. Lutz like my blue shirt? Maybe he likes green better.
Sorry, I like that.
Why didn't Mr. Lutz like my green shirt? Maybe he likes stripes better. Why hasn't Mr. Lutz said anything to me? I'm wearing his favorite shirt.
Why is Mohammed upset and confused about Mr. Lutz's student feedback? Perhaps because Mr. Lutz needs to be specific when he gives feedback on students' positive behaviors. Let's try this again.
Sorry, it's a great job walking safely in the hallway. Good work. So sorry, thanks for being responsible with dumping your tray and picking up the trash. Wow, sorry, thanks for opening the door. It's very respectful of you and to your whole class.
All right, so you get the idea there, but you saw in the first couple of examples how it was, thank you, good job, I like that, as opposed to thank you for being respectful and holding the door for everybody. We appreciate that. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show is a really great, this we're going to watch the whole thing. It's about 4.5 minutes. And this is actually a study on how to effectively give praise and actually some really cool side effects of why praise is important.
So check this out. Carol Dweck and her colleagues wanted to look into the impacts that praise had on children's development. So what they did is they took over 400 fifth grade students from all across the nation, and they did a really simple yet interesting study. Here's how it went down. They gave all the kids a really easy nonverbal IQ test. There were 10 questions, and at the end of the test, they praised all the children in one of two ways. The first group was praised for their intelligence. So they said, wow, great job. You must be really smart at this. Now the second group was praised for their effort. So they said, wow, great job. You must have worked really hard at this. Now this is a really subtle difference, but the impact it had is incredible. So after praising the kids and getting them divided up into the two groups, they gave them all an option for their next test. The first option was, hey, this next test is going to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be a great opportunity to learn and grow. Now, the second option was, this next test will be similar to the first, and you will surely do well on it. Now, the interesting thing is, out of the group that was praised for their intelligence, 67% of them chose the easier option, while 92% of the kids who were praised for their effort chose the harder test. This is unbelievable to think about, how just the subtle difference in the way that they were praised had such an impact. Carol Dweck explains why this happens.
Child or adult hears, oh, you think I'm brilliant and talented. That's why you admire me. That's why you value me. I better not do anything that will disprove this evaluation. As a result, they enter a fixed mindset, they play it safe in the future, and they limit the growth of their talents. Whereas focusing on the strategies they use, the way they're stretching themselves and taking on hard tasks, the intense practice they're doing, those are the kinds of things that, say, to a child or an older athlete, it's about the process of growth. As a result, they don't feel, oh, if I make a mistake, you won't think I'm talented. They think, oh, if I don't take on hard things and stick to them, I'm not going to grow.
Next, Dweck and her colleagues gave all the kids a really, really difficult test. It was one that they would surely fail, but they wanted to look at how the different kids attacked this challenge. Dweck noticed that the group that was praised for effort worked harder, longer, and actually enjoyed this test more than the group that was praised for their intelligence. This group got really frustrated with this test and had the tendency to give up early. After this artificially induced failure round, all of the kids were given a third and final test. Now, this test was the same level of difficulty as the first one, but check out the results. The group that was praised for their intelligence actually did worse on this test than the first one. Their average score actually dropped by 20%, while the group that was praised for their effort did significantly better, raising their average score by nearly 30%. This is a 50% difference in performance that was caused by a few subtle differences in the way that they were praised. This study shows how praise can either make or break a child's development. I mean, we all do it. We all want to be positive with the children we work with, so teachers, coaches, parents are always looking for ways to support their kids and tend to praise them quite a bit. So we need to look at research like this and realize, okay, praise is a good thing and there's nothing wrong with being positive, but we need to be very careful about praising someone's intelligence or abilities and focus more on the process and the effort that they put forth. I think this is a pretty easy fix that will help us develop growth mindset.
All right. So those are the two key points from those two videos. Is one, to be very specific when we're praising, so our kids know exactly what it is that we're praising them for. And the second way is to make sure when we're praising that we're praising not inherent personality constructs or personality traits, if you will. We want to make sure that we're praising effort and strategies. And you saw, although this is only one study, it's miraculous the impact and how different it was on how resilient kids were and willing to learn and try hard things and how they handled failure. So now real quick, we're going to talk quickly about something called the 5-to-1 ratio. And this is related to the idea of praise. Is children and teens should experience predominantly positive interactions at a ratio of 5 positives for every correction. So this is not to say that it's always going to be bunnies and rainbows and you're never allowed to raise your voice or correct your child or give a consequence or anything like that. The key to having it all fit together in the most effective way possible is to make sure that more of our interactions are positive than corrective. And there's a lot of research that demonstrates how the 5-to-1 ratio, that a lot of people call it the magic ratio. So it's not that negative interactions are wrong. They are sometimes necessary, but the key is to have things in balance. So just some quick, there's a lot of research on kids, but here's a couple that shows that this works for everybody. So one is on business teams. Lasada and Heafy in 2004 actually looked at high-performing teams in businesses. And they found that the teams that had that positive to correctives ratio in balance were actually more likely to innovate. They were more productive. They threw around ideas a lot more. And in teams that it was flipped, and so there were more corrections than positives, is people kind of tried to fly under the radar and they tried to kind of stay out of trouble, and there wasn't a lot of creativity and teamwork. The one that always blows my mind is one that Gottman did. He's done a lot of research on marriages. And what he did is he met with 700 newlywed couples, and the researchers watched their interactions for a single 15-minute conversation. So watch the husband and wife for 15 minutes. And then 10 years later, they followed up, and based on how they interacted in that ratio, they were able to predict divorce with 94% accuracy based on a 15-minute conversation. So this isn't just for kids. There is a lot of research behind this. So again, not that it's not okay. It is okay to sometimes correct your kids. That is okay. But really keep in mind the balance of praise and other positive non-contingent interactions, and keep that in balance with the corrections. So now we're going to talk about another alternative to just correcting behavior after there's a problem. There's something called pre-correction, which essentially is reminding a child or a teenager what's expected before the activity begins. So it's you can refer to your matrix. You want to do this especially during problematic routines, things that are always a problem, rather than waiting there to be a problem, is you refer to your matrix or you give a reminder before it starts. Okay, so I have a couple of examples that kind of link this all together. I won't show all of them just in the interest of time, but I have different age groups. So this is a great example of a kinder teacher reviewing the expectations for the classroom and then checking for understanding. And there's also some pre-corrections in there. Rather than just waiting for problems and walking into the same situation again and again, it's teaching, reminding, and reinforcing. So here's a kinder class.
Okay, boys and girls, I turned the lights off because it was getting a little noisy. What should it sound like when we're doing centers, when we're doing our math centers? Who can tell me? Amanda? Quiet. Can you whisper to your partner? Yes. Can you talk in a big voice to your partner? All right. Show me what it should look like and sound like when I turn the lights back on. Much better. Much better. We have gym this afternoon, snack, and you'll go home and you'll have playtime at home today. We're going to be too busy in here to fit our playtime in. All righty, everybody. Where do your hands belong when you're in your reading group? Everybody? In your lap. In your lap. Where do your feet belong during your reading group? On the floor. On the floor. Where do your eyes belong? On the book. On the book. Where does your back belong? On the back of the chair. So it should look like sitting with your feet on the floor, your hands in your lap, and your back on the chair. And it should sound like kids saying the words when there are signals and saying the sounds when there are signals. Got it? Got it. Thumbs up if you can do it today.
All right. So enough on that one. I encourage you, if you want to watch these all the way through, these teachers are amazing. But the full videos are posted on YouTube and also on the parent webpage. So just to show you that it's not just for the itty bitties, here's an example. This one's a lot faster to catch, so see if you can catch it. This is a high school class.
Okay, so that's what a cliche is. So here's what we're going to do next. I'd like you guys to work on the big sentence we were talking about. One complete sentence that uses a cliche. So when you want to use a cliche, you can always look up at the board of the things you've been doing or pick one of your own. So who has one that they'd like to use that? Yeah.
How about quiet as a mouse?
Quiet as a mouse is perfect. That's a cliche. Now, if you can't think of one of your own, you could always look up at the board. Or Rose, which one of these might you pick on yours? Hard as a rock. That's a good one. Okay, great. Get out that paper and let's go.
All right, so it was really fast, but you see he was letting the students know that they could pick one of their own, and he said it twice. You can give me one of your own, or you can look up at the board. And there was one student here that looks like maybe had some special needs, so she had a visual support, and he reminded her that she could look there. So again, pre-correction can be all ages. It's not just for little ones, but it's reminding students of what's expected or what tools they can use or whatever before there's an issue. All right, let's go to the next one. Just a couple, I'll just play this briefly again. It's a high school class, but it's another great example of referencing expectations and making sure you have everyone's attention and letting people know what's expected before. I think in this case, it's an exam.
And we remember our expectations, right? Okay, now remember, when we're talking about our test today, we have to be safe. Wait, hold on 1 minute. We have to be safe, right? Right? You have to be safe. Right, and we have to make sure we're doing our best on our work correctly. Right, and also, guys, when we are taking the test, there's absolutely no talking. That means voices are off. Can we do a sample of voices being off? Perfect. I don't want to hear a sound, okay? Next, you need to stay in your seat. If you need my attention, you need to do what? You need to do what? Can I see an example? Raise your hand. Not no, hey, Miss Williams, I need to slightly raise your hand. Okay, good job. Also, guys, our last thing, do your own work. I do not want you looking at her paper. Not today anyway, okay? Don't.
All right, we'll go on to the next one. So again, a really good example. It works for teenagers too. It has to do with referencing. She had her expectations in writing, and it wasn't super fancy. It was written on like a giant Post-it, but posting those, reviewing them, referencing them before the actual activity can save a lot of time and grief once the activity starts. So for parents, when can you as parents use pre-correction, since I couldn't find any example videos from home, but any routine or activity when you typically see behavior problems? These are the ones that are coming up a lot when I meet with parents or Zoom classes and morning routines, or appropriate use of technology are the ones that seem to be coming up more frequently. You could use it for any new activity or outing. Transitions is a great time to use a pre-correction. A lot of times transitions just breed behavior problems. And especially if it's a transition from something fun like technology time to something less fun like school Zoom. And you can also use it during routines when when your kids or teenagers need a lot of reminders, bedtime, chores, independent work, that kind of thing. So pre-correction is really a simple tool that can be used to get ahead of problem behavior. And we're directly referencing back to our matrix and to the expectations that we're talking about all the time. So why do we use it? It's simple, it's effective, it's preventative. It's the emphasis on prevention and teaching instead of fighting fires really does create a more positive environment or culture in your home, which not only feels better for your kids, but believe me, it will feel better for you. And it also, by constantly focusing on, instead of just telling kids to stop or correct, but by spending time really talking about values and why they're important and making it a part of our language and teaching and reinforcing, it really is helping our kids and teenagers see a connection between their actions and what happens next. All right, so the last thing, we do have a couple minutes left. So I threw this in, it doesn't totally fit, but it is a foundational practice. And I was really excited to find this video a couple months ago. It's actually on a website for military families, but it's one of the best examples I've seen about giving effective directions, because along with setting our values and teaching our expectations and using pre-corrections before problematic routines and using praise when they get it right, a very basic thing is how to give an effective direction, because it really can set the stage for whether you're going to have a power struggle or whether you're going to have a child actually follow your directions. So this is about a 5-minute video, and then we'll wrap up. So here is how to give effective directions.
Give effective directions. Giving effective directions is one of the most powerful steps that parents can take to improve children's cooperation. Unclear directions lead to conflict.
Come on, guys. Time for baseball practice. And what's the holdup? Let's go. Jeremy, Henry, get down here right now. Come on, let's go. Move it.
I don't want to go to stupid baseball practice. This sucks.
Get your hats and gloves on ASAP. Come on, guys, get it together. I shouldn't have to wait on you. When I ask you to do something, that means do it.
We didn't hear you.
Well, clean the wax out of your ears.
What is going on, guys?
I'll tell you what's going on. I told these guys at lunch we needed to leave at 2:45. It's almost 3.
You guys, we've talked to you about being late. You should know better.
Yeah, you should know better. How many times do we have to go over this?
All right, Jim. They've got the point.
No, I don't think they do.
Got the point.
Thanks. Now they're talking back to me. Thanks a lot.
Well, arguing about it is not going to get you there any faster, so you might as well just go.
Come on, guys, get in the car. We'll talk about this after.
That didn't feel good. When you don't give clear, effective directions, you can get into disagreements with your children. Kids can get in the habit of not minding or talking back, and they don't learn to follow through. Let's watch Dad try a different strategy.
Jeremy, Henry, it's time for baseball practice. Please put your game away now and get your hats and shoes on.
I don't want to go to stupid baseball practice. This sucks.
Thanks for getting ready, guys. You're a big help. I really appreciate it. Hey.
Quite a different outcome. This time, Dad gave directions that encouraged the kids to cooperate. He avoided conflict, threats, and coercion. These kinds of directions work and build positive relationships. First, Dad stays calm. He checks his emotions. Instead of yelling, he gives the direction in close contact, less chance of not being heard or being misunderstood. Now that Dad has the boys' attention, he gives a short, clear, and specific direction using the child's name and the words please and now.
Jeremy, Henry, please put your game away now and get your hats and shoes on.
A direction like this is easy to understand and to follow. Dad remains calm. He waits for 10 seconds. He doesn't get drawn into any arguments. In most cases, waiting those 10 seconds is all it takes.
Thanks for getting ready, guys. You're a big help. I really appreciate it.
And once his kids comply, Dad makes sure to follow through by expressing his appreciation. Praise powerfully reinforces behavior and makes it more likely that kids will follow directions in the future. Giving effective directions strengthens relationships and helps children cooperate. Over time, they learn the life skills they need to be successful. Let's review the steps to effective directions. Stay calm. Get close. Give a short, clear, and specific direction using the child's name and the words please and now. Wait 10 seconds. Follow through with praise.
Giving effective directions is harder than it looks because emotions so often get in our way. It's easy for us to jump into a negative statement or a complaint. Taking a couple of minutes, just like the father did in the video, to take a breath, really helps us to recall the simple script for giving effective directions. Tom, please put your shoes away now.
Okay, this is somebody that's not an adult. They need to have some direction. So by breaking it down to the simplest levels, that helped a lot. I mean, I used it today.
Giving effective directions is the foundation of getting children to cooperate. Practice this skill. Download and print.
All righty. So we'll wrap up. We're just about out of time. But again, there's all of these resources are on the parent webpage, but effective directions is another tool. It's not going to work 100% of the time, but it is a critical foundational practice to give a clear, consistent, calm direction. So just to wrap up, our foundational practices, we established this with routines, schedules, and our family expectations matrix. We then, again, it's not a one and done. We need to move on and then spend the rest of our time teaching and acknowledging. So we try to interact with our kids more often when they're behaving appropriately. We give effective directions. We use pre-correction. We remember what we talked about the importance of praise and how to give behavior-specific praise. And we remember that corrections are sometimes okay and necessary, but the key is that to aim for that 5-to-1 ratio to keep things in balance. So as always, this is just a screenshot of our parent webpage and a reminder that we have some other resources. If you want a one-on-one consult with me, we have something called office hours. You can find that on our parent webpage. There's a flyer where you can click a link and sign up. And we also have, you're watching this on YouTube, so you've probably noticed there's 2 different playlists. One is our QuickTips playlists, where we have workshops like this that are between 25 and 40 minutes. We also have a quicker tips playlist with some shorter things. We have some parent submitted questions that I answer in video, and those are usually around 10 minutes. And we also have quicker tips, which are 5 to 7 minutes and a lot shorter than this if you're just looking for one strategy or one tip to focus on at a time. So I hope this was helpful to help you connect some of the dots. Again, everything we talked about today, there is a full-length video on our YouTube playlist. So that's it for now. And until next time, bye for now.